Hi, good day to all our friends and supporters out there. Our podcast today with Martin Sherman is going to be broadcast live on Twitter, which is known as X, on YouTube, and on Facebook. And I encourage our friends and supporters, please share this on whatever media platform you use. We'd appreciate that. Martin, it has been pretty dramatic weekend so far. The attack against Arad. I mean, I'm reading right now. It's Arad and Dimona. It's close to 200 casualties right now. Mass casualty uh, tragedy right now from Iran. Civilians are being hurt. Thank God we've heard no one has died yet in that attack. I hope I'm accurate to say that. But Martin, what could you tell us about it right now?
I understand that there have been no fatalities.
No fatalities?
That's what I understand.
Right. So Martin, what is the we had you on before and we were talking about ultimately to properly defang the threat of Iran, of this Islamic regime in Iran and their infrastructure. The best way is to divide Iran, similar to how Yugoslavia was divided. Can you
and the Soviet Union, by the way,
and the Soviet Union? Can you please explain that? I mean, it's very given the threat, what's going on right now, that they want to put a chokehold on the flow of oil to the world. They want to, they have missiles that could definitely reach, they just proved it, into Europe. Their aspiration is to have nuclear tipped missiles, and they chant death to America, death to Israel, death to England. What's the best way to how do you go about dividing up the country, and how does it happen?
Well, I think the best way to do it. First of all, you need, as a necessary but not sufficient condition, you need to depose the current regime by regime change. But regime change doesn't go far enough. I think I said in your previous podcast that when the Shah was deposed, everyone expected, particularly in the Carter regime, everyone expected that it would be replaced by a secular democracy, and they were right for a very short period of time, and then the secular democracy was washed away by the Islamists, and no one really knows what a future regime would look like. We all hope it would be a docile liberal regime, but there's no guarantee that that would happen, and there's no guarantee that even if it does, that it will be sustainable over time. And if you look now, I mean, I've been watching overseas channels, and you see large demonstrations in support of the regime at the funerals of the leaders who've been killed. They fill up town squares all over the country. So, if Israel really wants to control the parameters, it must do something more than regime change. And I think the best way to do that is to encourage secessionist tendencies, which already exist in some of the areas. I was focusing on the Azeris, who are the biggest minority and share a border with Azerbaijan anyway, and the Kurds, who've been chafing at the bit for a long time, for decades, for their own sovereignty. but there are other areas which are potentially a target for secessionists, like the Baluchis in the east and the Iranian Arabs on the on the west coast, which control mostly the oil as well. I'm all for vigorous and robust military action. Like maybe even taking out the power sources now, as Trump's been talking about, but to encourage dissatisfaction with the regime. But as I say, but that's only the first stage. The next stage must be making a permanent change in Iran, so that it cannot sort of come back as a resurgent regime. The issue of the minorities is more and more talked about now. I saw recently that Dr. Moti Kedar, who's probably much more familiar with the Iranian internal politics than I am, but he's also bringing this up. Although his suggestion is a little different to mine. He suggests using the minorities as an instrument to bring down the regime, which I've got no argument with. But I think that doesn't go far enough. I think we have to go further and ensure that Iran can never be what it once was. Sorry. And so, breakup of countries is a very common thing. The example that we talked about before was Yugoslavia, and when you have a multi-ethnic country with an ideology that fails, when you can no longer hold the population together, like in Yugoslavia, Titoism failed, and instead of that, the whole country broke up into Albania, not Albania, Croatia and Serbia and Bosnia, etc., etc. They broke up into ethnic entities. There's no reason why that should not be feasible in Iran. If you suggested that Yugoslavia would break up in the 60s or the 70s, no one would have taken you seriously. But if you want an example even on a bigger scale, look at the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union broke up into all sorts of countries, from the Baltic countries in the north to the Central Asian republics in Central Asia, to Ukraine as well. And so there's no law that a country, a multi-ethnic country, which is bound together by an ideology, is something that has a permanent lifespan. And I think this is what the Israelis should, and the Americans should strive for. First of all, by an overt military action to bring down the regime, and then by covert methods with the CIA and the Mossad to encourage and emphasize the secessionist tendencies within the country, and to bring about the disintegration of Iran, so it can never ever comprise the threat that it has up until now.
Does it seem to be in the American plans to push for that?
I don't see them, not publicly anyway, and not in Israel either. They're all sort of towing this politically correct line of respecting Iran's territorial integrity, which might be a good poster for the campaign. But I think behind that, they should strenuously strive to not do that. As I say, by covert means, to encourage the breakup of the country, and I think in many ways it's right for that. The minorities have a lot of grievances about prohibitions on the use of their language at the schools, etc., etc. And once the regime falls and the center is weakened, then I think that you'll have a much better opportunity to encourage the breakup. Yeah. And by the way, what's the downside?
Right.
Why not try that?
No,
Yeah.
no, I agree. I agree. There's, I mean, we see what they're doing right now, and you don't want that anymore. Therefore, they have to be weakened.
Yeah. And the only way to permanently ensure that is about breaking it up into smaller, much weaker ethnic entities, not all of whom have common interests. So I don't understand why this isn't at least covertly on the agenda.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just look, before the attack against Arad and Dimona, I think it was on Friday, the regime they publicly hung a 19-year-old wrestler. I don't see the liberals out in the streets,
No, you're right.
progressives out in the streets, like no outrage. It's just
There's been no outrage for 50 years now, 47 years or something. There's been, it's um, a stark example of the double standards in international relations.
yeah, certainly is, certainly is. Uh, I think more and more people have to start speaking out that Iran has to be weakened, has to be divided into separate states, and they have to be completely defanged. There's no question about it.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think in many ways, the outside view of Iran is completely different from the internal view. I think people are judging the opposition to the regime by many economically successful diaspora in Toronto and Beverly Hills and Los Angeles and places like that, where Iranians have become completely absorbed and Americanized, and they're judging the wider um, Iranian population by the perception of Iranians through the diaspora, and I think that Islam probably has strong roots in many parts of the country, and it's a regime change won't necessarily uh, weaken that identification with Islam, and they may be pliable. Uh, it's difficult to know the future, and if there's a way to neutralize that possibility, I can't understand why it wouldn't be on the agenda now. And you may have a similar problem in Turkey as well. I mean, in Turkey, Turkey, the elites were secular. The Turkish army had a constitutional duty to stop it being Islamic. The army had the duty to keep it secular, and for a number of decades it worked. But eventually, when you may have had secular colonels and generals, but you had Islamic corporals and privates, and so eventually, you can say whatever you like about Erdogan, but he certainly was a very capable and courageous opponent. I mean, a very dangerous opponent. But he took on the whole Turkish military establishment and and completely defanged them. I mean, I remember I wrote an article with someone called Çevik Bil, who was a
Hmm.
general in the Turkish army, and he was the guy who arrested Erdogan when he was still mayor of Istanbul, and Erdogan was banned from taking part in politics, and he came roaring back. He was in prison. He was released from prison, and he eventually put Chevik Beer in prison himself. So the tables were completely turned. So it's you should always be very careful about underestimating the power of your opponents. And
Right.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we're reaching the end of this segment. Martin, final closing remarks that you could say regarding where we're headed right now with Iran.
Well, my problem is that the pressures at home domestically, in certainly in NATO, certainly in America, even with the right wing, although at the moment Trump has strong support within the Republican Party, but he's got a growing woke right wing that are opposing foreign involvement. I think we have to be very careful about that, and
Mm-hmm.
have to work strongly on keeping the ranks together. And let's hope um, Trump and the Secretary of War Hexet manage to give the tone, because at the moment they seem to be on course. And again, Trump doesn't need to worry about being re-elected. He can't be re-elected unless some unforeseen change of the constitution takes place. So he's more or less free from electoral considerations, at least for himself. I don't know about the party, but I think the important thing now is also is winning the public diplomacy battle on the home front. I think that's vital to
Mm-hmm.
bring people to understand that basically the regime in Tehran is in many ways a reflection of the Nazi regime in Germany, and
Absolutely.
we should apply the same criteria in confronting them.
100%. 100%. I see that the ideology is similar. It's yeah.
Yeah, there might be marginal changes, in the way it was structured and the way it's been managed slightly, but basically, you have a totalitarian ideology enforced by the most cruel means of repression there and here, and no dissent is tolerated at all. And they, like the Nazi regime, they have expansionist ambitions through their proxies who've been seriously damaged. But also, spreading the Islamic Revolution was part of the deal.
Yep. Yep. Well, these are historical times, biblical times. It's the challenge to the Jewish people to rise up in Israel. It's unbelievable. The army. There's a readiness to go out there.
Oh, yes.
Thank God. Just pray that we're led by leaders that that have the right vision for Israel.
Yeah, but let's hope they're not abandoned by the electorates. I mean, that's, as I say, I think the big challenge now is the presenting the war as an unavoidable imperative.
And certainly the past 2.5 years have thrown into the garbage the concept of land for peace.
Yeah,
Is just ridiculous. Israel under I think it was Ehud Barak. They left Lebanon, and Hezbollah festered. And
every single time Israel has abandoned
yep,
land to Arab administration, it's been used as a platform to attack, whether it was in Lebanon, whether it was in Gaza, whether it was in Judea and Samaria.
yeah,
And we still haven't seen the final scene, what's happening in Gaza.
Right.
If the Muslim Brotherhood hadn't been deposed there, I don't know what situation we'd be in now. And Sisi is making very sinister and surreptitious moves against Israel. We should never forget that Sisi's roots were in the Muslim Brotherhood, even though
Right.
he broke with Morsi. But he's got his own agenda, and the Egyptian military buildup in Sinai, in total contradiction of the peace agreement, is a very worrying development.
And his position lecturing Israel, saying that it is a red line to allow Gaza civilians to flee the war zone into the Sinai.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
that's something unbelievable. And what's even more unbelievable is that the West is going along with that instead of bringing huge pressure against Egypt to allow the Palestinians to free the fighting. Egypt, who supposedly cares about the Palestinians, wants to imprison them in this war zone with death and destruction and dereliction and destitution. It's very difficult to understand because this is a total infringement of the freedom of movement, which is a basic human right, especially during a war and in every other conflict you can see, whether it's in Syria or whether it's in Ukraine or wherever there's military activity going on, the civilian population flees the fighting, and whether permanently or otherwise.
Right. 100%. 100%. The only difference is they apply this double standard against Jews in Israel. Yeah. And they want Israel to look bad with every picture you could take or every video you could take of civilians in the war zone in Gaza.
Yeah, I would say a great number, probably even a majority of civilian casualties were due to two factors, none of which have anything to do with Israel. One is they were used as human shields by Hamas, and secondly, they weren't allowed to flee the fighting because of Egypt. So these two reasons: the use of civilians as human shields, and the prohibition or forbidding them to leave the fighting zone by Egypt. Those were generated many casualties.
Yep, 100%. Martin, we're at the end right now. We'll do it again. We'll have many more shows. I mean, this is going on. This war is going to go on for a while, and we need updates all the time. Thank you very much for joining us. And again, to everyone who's watching, please share this on whatever social media platform you use. We'd really appreciate that. And whoever wants to get involved with Israel Now, you could go on our website, send us a message, israelnow.ca, or make a contribution if you like. That's fine. But thank you very much, Martin, for joining us today. Thank you very much.